Dear friends, I had a chance to watch a famous magic show. A magic show, a musician who is world famous by name David Copperfield. How many of you have watched this magic? Just let me know. How many of you have watched this magic? Good. I was not very impressed about all the things that he was doing, but one thing that was mind-boggling I could not explain to myself. Until today I cannot in any way understand how he did it. And that was, he called 13 people on the stage. That was a big, huge auditorium, big hall that can contain more than 1,000 people. And he called 13 people on the stage and made them climb a platform within the stage. And then he said, you know, this is a very dear trick that I want to perform and people like it. So he asked them to sit, 13 people, and he covered that particular platform with a very thin covering, a curtain, through which we could see them. And then he had given them the torchlights from within so that they can, you know, show the light that they are inside. And at one point, just it was 1 to 2 seconds, blackout, and he removed the curtain. Boom! The stage was empty. The stage was empty. And then what happened? At that same moment, he put the lights behind the auditorium. It was a huge auditorium, big hall that can contain 1,000 people, as I said. They were at the end of the hall, all of them standing with their torch lights on. This happened within 2 seconds. Boom! I could not explain it to myself, and those people were all amazed at this magician's capacity. Dear friends, I don't want to tell here today about David Copperfield, but once he was asked, who is your greatest hero? And he casually said, Jesus Christ. He said. He's a Jew, but he said, my greatest hero is Jesus Christ. Dear friends, today's gospel passage is a fantastic passage for us because there is Emmaus and there is Jerusalem. These two disciples were traveling to Emmaus, which is historically considered as garrison city, the Roman garrison, where the Romans had collected a small group of army as well as weapons, shields and spears and swords. At any eventuality, this garrison would react. You know, they would provide protection or even an attack. So that is called the garrison city. Now, when we look at these disciples who are traveling from Jerusalem to Emmaus because of the tragedy that happened in Jerusalem, that was early first day of the week. Early first day of the week, Jesus had appeared to many disciples, Mary Magdalene. He had entered the closed, shut room of the disciples. They were filled with fear of the Jews. And this particular incident happened in the late evening the same day, first day of the week. Now what happens? They were going from Jerusalem to Emmaus. It's a quite opposite direction because Jesus was throughout his life going towards Jerusalem. These two disciples going against Jerusalem towards Emmaus. It's a kind of understanding a pattern here. Why Jerusalem? Jesus concentrated his activities in Jerusalem because Jerusalem was the center of politics, center of religion because of the temple, center of philosophies. Greeks used to come, and it was also an economic center because a lot of business was happening there. The Jewish people, and especially the apostles and disciples, were expecting a kind of political leader in Jesus. A leader who would boost their economy. A leader who would liberate them from the hands of the Romans. They were looking at Jesus, a prophet and Messiah, a great person who would give them freedom. But now, all those happenings on Friday, Good Friday, Jesus died on the cross, their hopes were completely shattered. and they leave Jerusalem. Now they go to another center. Most probably they were having some hope. If Jews cannot help us, Jewish leaders cannot help us, even this Messiah who was a promised person cannot help us, let us now continue to become slave of the Romans. So let us go to the garrison city. Let us be their slaves. Anyway, they are going to give us some kind of protection, some kind of security. So they were sad. Looking at their face, they were sad. They were discussing all these things. And then, what happened? Jesus sneaks into their company. Now here is something that is extraordinary, we cannot understand, because each time Jesus made his appearance, Mary Magdalene, the disciples, and these two disciples, at the first instant they could not recognize him. Now practical point to all of us. Dear friends, we always look for security. Always. We look for money, we look for security in our family, security in a friend, or political security, or whatever security we call it. We always go to a place that is secure. Now in this aspiration for security, we need to understand what kind of security we are really looking for. Is it a material security or spiritual one? Now when Jesus enters into their life, they do not recognize, and Jesus asking, what things are you discussing? And the disciples were stunned, and Cleopas asked, are you the only person who does not know all those things that have happened in Jerusalem? Are you the only person? All these things that have happened, most important things about Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus then opens the scriptures and he says, you are really foolish. Dear friends, sometimes we are really foolish, right? You know, when we look at the life situations, including me, I don't blame you, including me, we are very foolish. We only look for earthly security without giving much importance to what is important to our heart. You know, sometimes we sacrifice our joy, peace, happiness, but we go after things of the world. Maybe money, name, fame, other things. But when we come back home, we have a kind of sadness. You know, the world has not offered to us anything. With money, with pleasure, with all the things that world offers, when we come back to our own heart, we feel emptiness. That is what understanding a pattern. You know, the whole life of Jesus was understanding a pattern. What do I call it? Pattern. Now we see here in this guardian angels, at every mass, at the end, I crack a joke. Have you remembered that? I always crack a joke. But then, at least 25 to 30% and sometimes 80% of people don't understand the pattern of my joke. They don't laugh. And then I tell, when you get back home, you will get the real sense of the joke and then you start laughing. Doesn't matter. It takes a little more time to laugh. But there are some people who get it so suddenly, they burst to laughter because they caught the pattern. In our whole life, it is a question of catching the pattern, understanding the pattern. And what is that pattern here? Look at the book of Genesis, Exodus, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, all those prophets. They have a reference to Jesus. If you read those books, only historical books, you will not understand anything. They will be just like other million books in the shelves, dry books. You read history, you forget history. But Bible is not a historical book, remember that. Every word that is spoken right from Genesis till Jesus has a live significance. It can give us meaning only when we understand the resurrection. Take away resurrection from Christianity, dear friends, nothing in Christianity remains. Nothing. It's all cluttered things put together. But with resurrection, everything brings out a powerful meaning to all of us. And that's why when Jesus explained the scripture to the disciples, they felt a sensation in their heart, burning sensation. When we go to work, dear friends, when we are in the family, when we are with our friends, when we go for any entertainment for that matter, when you go shopping, always connect everything with Jesus, then you will have a strong meaning in your life. If you exclude resurrection, everything falls flat. Remember that. Even when you go to casino, playing in casino, okay, remember Jesus, whether it is really needed to play or not, whether it is really required or not. Because I have met so many people in my life who have lost plenty of money. They still hope that one day they will strike a big jackpot. I do not know when. They keep on playing. They lose money after money. But then this reflection, taking into our heart, whether it is really needed, does it bring happiness, joy, hope? You know, when we make that reflection, bringing Jesus into our hearts, then life changes. Priorities change. Things become better. Now, these two disciples, after listening to Jesus, what happened? They invited Jesus into their home. And at the breaking of the bread, Jesus said, "Do this in memory of me." Their eyes were opened. They recognized Jesus. After consuming that bread, they were energized. And that is what we see in our Sunday gathering. Dear friends, Sunday gathering, sometimes we take it very lightly. You know, we go for entertainments, movies, clubs, dances, discussions with our friends with a glass of beer or 2 or 3 or 4, a glass of wine. We spend a lot of time. Very good. I'm not against it because I am also drinking wine and beer, okay? But then, one thing is very important. In touch with God. We need to have that communion with God. These two disciples, when they saw Jesus breaking bread, they recognized it. We need to recognize the resurrected Lord in our daily lives. And this can happen on Sunday gathering or any other gathering for that matter. This morning we had 9 children, their first communion celebration. I told the children, dear children, always make it a point every day at least to take one meal together with your parents. One meal together with your parents, because the Eucharistic celebration you have in the church is repeated at home when you sit with your parents and having your meal together. And what do? You consume the meal, you crack a joke, you listen to your father, listen to your mother, they will listen to you, you pour out your heart. That's what is happening during our meal. That is the Holy Eucharist. Eucharist is not just coming and saying hi, bye, peace be with you, the Lord be with you and with your spirit. That is not Eucharist. Eucharist is real participation in the body and blood of Christ. That is why these two disciples, after receiving the body and blood of Christ, they went back the same evening or maybe night back to Jerusalem. You know, Jerusalem is a city of suffering. Jerusalem is the city of resurrection. That's why I told on Good Friday, if there is no cross, there is no crown. No pain, no gain. That's why Jesus very clearly said, was it not necessary for the Son of Man to suffer and then enter into glory? Make a reflection in your own life, in my own life. Today if you are here, dear friends, with all the pains and losses, sufferings and struggles you had in your life, if you have come to this stage, it is because of the pattern you received from Jesus. If there is no cross, there is no crown. No pain, no gain. So if you have come to this stage of life, it is because Jesus himself said, was it not necessary that you suffer and enter into glory? ETL today. Was it not necessary to suffer and enter into glory? Parents of ETL, it was a suffering. It was pain. But then you have a joy of having your baby in your hand today. That is what suffering leads to glory, suffering leads to joy, suffering leads to resurrection. In every field for that matter, dear friends, we need to understand the pattern. The whole of the scripture is one pattern to understand. That is passion, death and resurrection. That's why these two disciples were enthusiastic. Go back to Jerusalem, proclaim the good news to all those people who are expecting this good news of liberation, freedom, peace and joy. Let us ask the Lord during this week to enlighten us with this truth, that we go back to Jerusalem, announce the good news to all the people. That is the joy of the gospel we have to share. God bless you.